So you're thinking about giving award school a go, and you're thinking to yourself, shit, what now? Well, in this episode, I chat to Liz Hammond. As well as being the creative director at Rare in Perth, which is Perth's largest independent agency, she also heads up award school out there and has overseen some of the last few years' winners. And she talks to us about what you can do to win, but also what you need to do to watch out and make sure you have a really strong book. So please like, subscribe and share with anyone you might find it useful. And as always, enjoy the video.
I am currently creative director at Rare, which is Perth's largest independent agency. I've been in the industry since around about 2000, so 21 years now. And I've worked in Perth and over in Canberra for 6 years as well, and then back to Perth again at a few different agencies. But I guess the other side of my life is that I'm a mum of an 8-year-old and 10-year-old girls. So I guess that's my the life that I'm balancing while I'm in the world of advertising.
As well as a lead judge or juror at award school over in Perth as well.
Yeah, so this year heading up award school, which is one of those things you volunteer for and then you look back and go, was that really a smart decision? But I'm one of those people that, as you've probably noticed by the fact that I've volunteered for this, is that I can't say no to these kind of things.
I always say, come on, let's go, just when I ought to say nix.
I'm so passionate about helping the talent come through the ranks and doing what I can to be a part of building that really sort of industry full of people that love what they do and bring fresh perspectives to their work and that are going to enrich my working life by being around people that have that sort of energy. So I do what I can wherever I can to make that happen as well.
That's it. It's incredibly fulfilling giving back to some degree, and it's a brilliant industry, which is, as you say yourself, it's taken you across all of Australia, worked on some great clients, some great agencies. For me personally, it's brought me over to Australia, and it really is great. So thank you so much for coming onto the show. Really, it is a pleasure having you on here. How did you break into advertising?
I actually started out studying engineering. So there's actually surprising the number of advertising creatives that started out their life in some form as an engineer. I didn't quite manage to finish that degree before I had a bit of an epiphany that I really, really didn't want to do engineering and sort of decided to explore the other side of my my interests in terms of creativity, and ended up doing graphic design. Final year of graphic design degree, my lecturer, who was a really inspiring guy, suggested that I do award school, and ta-da! And so I went down that path, while also working part-time, studying full-time, again, taking on everything I possibly could all at once. Through winning award school that year, I ended up with a placement as a very, very junior art director. And that sort of 6-week placement turned into a full-time job. I just went from there.
Yeah, wow. And you've never looked back since?
Yeah, no, it was, as soon as I sort of made that shift from graphic design into advertising, I knew it was something that I really wanted to do. I get a lot of pleasure from solving puzzles and, thinking laterally but logically at the same time. And I think advertising really suits that way of thinking. I've just enjoyed every minute of it. So, yeah, it's been great.
Brilliant. And I also think that's fantastic that your lecturer at the time recommended award school.
Yeah.
For me, back in the day, it was, I say back in the day, it's a really long time ago, but it's not that long ago. Is that there was no real resource. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, well, there's Saatchi's. I was like, well, everyone knows Saatchi's. Ask my mum and she knows who Saatchi's are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good. And it's good to see that, academics are also trying to bridge that gap to help sort of say, right, once we've taught you what to do, it's, here's the segue to that. So that's really fantastic. And I think throughout your career, you've obviously gone from different agencies, different cities. What has been your biggest challenge, and how have you overcome it during your career?
Yeah, so I've worked at a lot of different kinds of agencies. So I started out in Perth's biggest agency that was part of the sort of WPP network, and so I experienced that very sort of structured environment, and then went from there to a much smaller independent, and I've sort of toggled between the networks and the independents throughout my career, and I definitely found a lot more challenges while working in the larger networks, and my personal way of working and the people that I like being amongst and the culture that I like being amongst is I definitely find it more in the smaller agencies. But in terms of sort of related to that, but the challenges that I've experienced, there's a lot of things that balancing being a parent and specifically being a mum, I think, throw up quite a few difficulties in terms of this career. I mean, the really simple one is sleep deprivation. And that's actually kind of interesting. It's coming back into a job and, only getting 2 or 3 hours sleep a night. You're not actually my creative self.
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing that people don't consider, but you're pushing yourself to it's hard enough to stay awake, let alone to get creative. So that's an interesting. But look, the other really big one for me was imposter syndrome, which I know is something that is really widespread, and almost any creative that you talk to has at some point in their career felt it and felt like they're somehow cheating by having the job that they have because they don't really deserve it, and they can't really do it, and they're not as good as everyone else, and they're just making it up as they go along. But those kind of feelings, the feelings of, I guess, do I really deserve to be here? It's definitely something that I know is felt more acutely by women. And I suppose that might be partly because we're definitely, there's a much more higher prevalence of women in creative departments now, but certainly when I started, it was very male dominated. And when you look at award juries and things like that, they're still very male dominated, and that everyone's making a big effort to get that balance happening. But I think that's one of the reasons that women feel that more strongly. But I guess my situation of having a couple of blocks of 6 months of, maternity leave, sitting at home changing nappies and, working out how to feed a child and, all the other stuff that goes along with that, being completely out of the industry for those big stints of time, coming back into it, and also being part-time when you come back in, it's a huge struggle. It's, you're questioning yourself every minute of every day on whether or not you've got what it takes to do this job. So yeah, I was really struggling for, the first 12 or 18 months when I really started getting back into a proper art director's role. And it really took until I moved out of the job that I was in to a different agency and had a different team around me, and found some people who are far more supportive and, really able to see what I was dealing with and see what I was capable of, and help me get where I needed to be, help me get my confidence back up again. That, really came through that.
Yeah. And so many points there that are so valid, especially around your team and how it fits, and especially when you're going through hardships or just, as you say, going things like through sleep deprivation during busy times. And I think it is so true that you're the average of the 5 people you are around you. Yes. And you really need to, it's been a thing for me, just making sure that I surround myself with bloody good people. But not only just good at their jobs, but good humans too. And
hugely important. I
mean, we're effectively a business built on people, so it's inherently important.
My ECD here, my my boss is someone who's taught me and really instilled in me that you do need to build up people's confidence, because creativity rides so much on confidence. And so, you know, obviously not in a false way, but in a way where you're constantly encouraging people to find their best selves and their best ways of working. And also, really, it's something else that I've learned about dealing with my team is, if someone's not performing, it's not about criticizing their performance. It's looking for the reasons why, and trying to understand what's going on at home and what life circumstances they've got and what are the struggles they're facing. And it's so often there's just such a simple cause of something that you can help out with or forgive, or you know, understand that it's temporary and be there to support them. And yeah, that in this job, as a, you know, where your creativity is your you know, your wares, it's so important to look after that and nurture that.
Yeah, exactly right. And just out of curiosity, I thought it's very interesting to hear what you were saying about the differences between defining your career in independents and smaller agencies and versus bigger, very process-driven group agencies. And whilst I think it's good for people to definitely do a stint in those bigger agencies and what have you, I would always advocate for someone to have a crack at an indie, because I think you kind of, you see the other side of the coin, and you know, you inherently become a bit more, let's say, entrepreneurial, really creatively entrepreneurial and commercially driven, which you know, again, just helps put a laser focus on all the work that you do. And yeah, to your point, within those sort of smaller agencies, your support network, I guess, tends to be a bit more rigid and tight, and you know, flat structures mean you have exposure to people at the very top on a conversational level.
And I 100% agree. I think that also you don't necessarily appreciate what you've got until you've seen the other side. So there's actually a few people here who have never worked at the larger agencies, and I actually, while I love, you know, working with them and I don't want them to go, I do kind of I want them to appreciate what they've got here more, because it's like the other side is not so much fun. You know, but it's like you say, you know, there are pros and cons of both, and you know, more so it's definitely much more about finding your cultural fit at an agency. You know, I've worked in environments where other creators around me have absolutely thrived, and it's just not been right for me. So I think that you need to understand, or young creatives coming through need to understand, that their first job in a creative department or their first taste of an agency is not necessarily all that's out there, and they're not all cookie cutters, and they're not all versions of the same thing. So if you don't write at a place and you don't feel like you're thriving creatively or you know, culturally at a place, then see what else is on the, you know, on offer, because there can be huge differences. So. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's, you know, going back to your point around confidence, and one thing that you'll definitely get in a small agency is empowerment, because there just aren't as many people around. So I think naturally, whilst for some people it might be daunting to be thrown in at the deep end, personal opinion for me is, I think that's a good thing. And, you know, it's you're given the keys to voice your thoughts. You're not just one of, as you say, a cast of thousands. And yeah, so no, I would definitely advocate for that.
Yeah.
Which is a really nice segue onto the next point around you're the head of award school for Perth this year.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
I'm curious, what are some of the mistakes that you see entrants run into, and how can they be avoided?
There's a few things. The most important one I really think is staying on brief. And you know, if you've been to university or done second study in advertising, you'll know that the proposition is sort of all important. But for everyone else out there who's coming into award school from all these different places, it's really important to know that proposition is everything. So if you've got a great idea for one of your briefs, it's not a great idea if it doesn't actually communicate that proposition. So just really focus on that. The next thing I'd say is people overcomplicating their responses. in the idea itself, but also the way that it's presented. I've been in that judging room, and the judges really want to be able to look at a concept and just get it within the first couple of seconds of looking at it.
Their fate hangs on the thumb of our final judge.
Even the more complicated integrated campaigns, if it's a really good, solid idea, it'll come across on the page really quickly. So do everything you can to make sure the idea is nice and simple and clear, but also the way you explain it and the way you present it is nice and simple as well. The other one that you get, not only with award school students, but also with juniors is, and I'm conscious of this because it was something I used to do so often myself, not listening when people say that the idea doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's really difficult to believe someone when it makes so much sense to you yourself, when it's your idea, you've come up with it, everything about it seems logical and amazing and creative, and then someone else comes along and says, well, it doesn't make sense. Your automatic reaction is to be, well, you're clearly just not understanding it and I'm too brilliant for you. But it's so important to listen when people say that, because all it means is that you've left your loop a little too open. You need to close it a little further. You might need to give people a few more clues as to the what you're trying to communicate, or in some cases obviously it's chuck it out and start again. But that piece of advice when people around you are saying it doesn't make sense, it's just so important to listen to that. And the final thing I'd say is understanding that your final target audience really is those judges in that room at the end who are judging the folios. So know who you're speaking to in terms of them being professionals from the industry who have a lot of experience, who have seen everything before. They're looking for fresh ideas. They know, they're very much aware of the level and the kind of award-winning work that's out there, and that's the kind of work that they're looking for and they're expecting. So, get your head around what these people are wanting, and do what you can to speak to them in a way that they'll really see what you're capable of.
Almost in any discipline within advertising is relevant.
Yeah.
It's I think as brilliant as our industry is, I think sometimes we get too caught up in it, and it's like, what's the actual purpose of what we're achieving? So I think your point about just keeping it simple, if you can't explain it to your grandma in 30 seconds, then so then on the flip side to that, what for those entrants that you do see, what makes someone stand out? What do the winners kind of have in common?
Yeah, look, definitely that simplicity thing. I think Ollie, who was our winner from Perth last year, but ended up winning nationally as well, looking through her folio, it was just outstandingly simple. There were some ideas in there that just needed no explanation whatsoever, and just spoke for themselves, and just a really beautiful put together storyboard for a TVC that, one glance and you got the concept. As I was saying before, I think that the winners do have that clarity to their thinking, which is really valuable. The other thing is, and I think this is something that the judges are looking for more and more in recent times, is a folio where the person's personality comes through. It's really great to see a fresh approach to thinking, a fresh approach to advertising, and that little bit of personal angle coming through in things. It's great to see a solution that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. That's something that I think always makes the judges happy, and gives the concept extra points in the judges' mind. And I think this industry as well is crying out for a more diverse, range of thought processes and life experiences to come to the table and really enrich the work that we're doing. And I think it's really important that we keep advertising culturally relevant in that way. So that's a big one. So let yourself come through in a way that obviously, all those other points as well. Make sure you're still meeting the brief and blah blah blah. But let yourself shine in your work for sure. The only other thing I'd say is that it's really worth making sure that your folio doesn't have any super weak pieces. So
You. Get out!
I think every year the winner is someone who definitely will have one or two outstanding pieces, but there's often, there's often a bunch of students that have those one or two or three outstanding pieces. But the winner will have those, but then have a real bulk of their work will also be, a really solid, great level, but they won't have any really weak pieces. Their worst pieces will be still, really good, strong answers to a brief. So I think the best advice to people who really want to hit that top level and place is just really go through and find the weakest points of your folio and spend your time, your last couple of days, just pushing those as hard as you can, and really, working to get that bottom up as high as it can be.
Yeah, that's it, right? You can't raise the roof until he raises the floor. Is it? Yeah, is that the same? Yeah.
True that.
Yeah. Quote Chris Murphy, 2021.
It's now in the book of phrases. So yeah. Excellent.
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on was personality, and I think this is one thing that I think some people possibly misinterpret when they get feedback from this. I think some people see that as bravado, over the topness, what have you, and it is what you're saying though. It's not really that, is it? It's kind of expressing what's unique to you through the work that you have. Is that my understanding?
Yes, you're right. It's hard to think of an example, but it's a lot of people have a certain quirkiness in the way that they think. It's not a matter of being trying to approach every brief with by using humor or anything like that. It's about having a fresh lens on the world. It's almost, don't be afraid if an idea you have is not an idea that you've seen before. It's such a good thing. It might not feel like what you think advertising should feel like. It might just be that you've got a completely different way of approaching solving this particular problem. So I think it's just not being afraid to let your own thinking guide you, and not try to fit your not try to make your solutions look like what you expect an ad should look like.
Yeah, understood. And I think it's that's the holy grail, right? Finding your unique perspective on the world as almost like an axis. That's one, and then the other axis is on brief.
Yeah, like I've been doing this now for 21 years or something, and I am only just now finding my voice, and people are starting to recognize when it's something that's an ad that I've had a big part in creating. I guess that I've been one of those people who has along my career tried to emulate what I've seen out there, and it's great advertising internationally, and it's really, you need to find your own confidence and find your own your angle on solving problems. I think it's taken me 21 years to find mine, but yeah, it's interesting when it happens.
That sort of thing comes through mentorship, right? And being guided and having the right people around you. And yeah, it's I think some creatives, some young creatives, older creatives I've talked to as well, maybe beat themselves up a bit too much about not having defined that exactly, right? It's iterative. I think you just keep improving, moving forward, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think mentorship is so important. That's one of the great new initiatives that's come out of award school last year, is the mentorship program, which I think has been really valuable to the last cohort. It's like you see these youngsters coming through with such a different feel to their work, and having someone who's prepared to nurture that and shape it into something that's, you know, commercially useful to the industry, but at the same time doesn't crush that personality, I think is really important. So yeah, mentorship is huge.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, I feel like the conversation flows very nicely towards where we're going, and as we're looking towards the end of this interview and episode, what would be your hot tips for, you know, young women looking to break into the industry? It's almost as if you could talk back to yourself all those years ago. What would be your tips?
Yeah, oh my God, I would have loved a mentor when I broke into the industry. And like I was saying, when I first started, the creative department and the agency that I entered was so male dominated. It was quite an experience. I would have loved to have had a female role model that I could have sat down with and chatted about how to work with that, you know, which battles to pick and which ones just to, you know, leave in my back pocket and deal with later. But yeah, I think mentors, finding a mentor or a role model that's a woman who's gone through what you're about to go through is huge. And it will really give you so much confidence and strength and direction in what you're doing. Other thing is that I think that there's a real legacy in the industry of there being a male way of going about things, a masculine version of what management is, but also in the actual, you know, presentation skills and or presentation methods, but in the creative thinking itself as well. And I think that there's an expectation that is the way of doing things, but I think that women need to understand that we can approach things differently, and we can have a more female way of working. And, you know, I don't want to I don't think there's any stereotypes in one or the other. I don't think that there's one way of doing things that's male and one way of doing things that's female. I think that there are just an absolute spectrum of options out there, but it's a matter of finding your own way. So I think when I stepped into the creative director role, there was definitely this sort of expectation that I would be a creative director in the way that people had experienced creative directors before, which had all been male. And I had a very different style. And I think that it's been interesting for me to come to the realization that I get criticized a fair bit by people who think that they're being helpful with giving advice on how I should do things differently. But I've come to understand that I can take that advice, I can listen to it, and I can make a decision that, no, actually, you know what, I'm approaching that problem in my own way. I have a different understanding of the issues and a different way of going about it, and that's okay. That's my method, and it's a perfectly valid method that's having a great effect on the situation. So,
but further to that as well, like, you know, gender aside, a point that you made earlier, it's about finding yourself and your own style, right? And,
yeah, that's it.
It's a part of who you are. So, you know, I think that's incredibly invaluable advice. One thing that a lot of junior creatives say is, oh my God, we get bombarded with so much stuff and like criticism all around. And it's like, how do I process it? How do I do it? And what have you? And, you know, I think your point there around just kind of going like, right, well, this is who I am. This is how I feel it's right. Yeah. And I'll take on feedback that will help constructively find my way.
Yeah, finding a way to trust your gut is really important. And then, yeah, like you say, balancing that with knowing when the advice that you're getting sort of supersedes that, like, is actually really important advice. So I think it's a matter of tuning in the right supportive voices that you trust, and then tuning out the critical ones that are you know, not helping the situation, not helping you, not helping find your best work and your best self, I suppose. Yeah, totally.
And that doesn't have to be external. A lot of the time, to your point about imposter syndrome, it comes from within, right?
Oh my God, the judgment, the self-judgment, and, you know, my personal experience, but that's just so universally experienced by all creatives. Like, it's just such a big thing. You know, you put your heart on the line with every job that you do. And you face criticism every day on, you know, something that has creatively come from your own crazy mind. and to deal with that and have to pop back up and do it again day after day is really difficult. So I think tuning your own mind into being useful and helpful and kind to yourself is something that takes time. And I think, forgiving yourself a little bit and giving yourself a little bit of time, giving yourself time, that's really important. I'm 21 years in and still working it out. So juniors shouldn't expect to be, feeling magical every day about what they're doing. It can be a really hard slog. And, like you say, that the personal criticism is probably one of the biggest parts of it. So
you might not have had the best review or day or whatever, but take a step back. Is your overall trajectory going in the right place?
Yeah.
It probably is. So, and it's you're never going to have it 100% every time, but as long as you give it your best crack, then, you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
You're just starting out in the industry. Of course, you're going to make mistakes. But yeah, I guess it's just kind of sort of like that millennial/Gen Z thing where it's like, God, everything needs to be absolutely spot on. I want to impress, which is absolutely the right mindset to have. But just making sure you don't beat yourself up along the way is also equally important, right?
Yeah, it's so important. And I think coming back to my situation of being a mum, that, not being able to do everything straight away and probably as fast as I wanted to was something that I had to learn is a really important thing. It's like, we grew up with this this understanding that women can have it all, you can have your career and you can have your kids, and isn't that amazing? But what you have to learn is that there are going to be sacrifices along the way. And one of them is you just have to just slow down, take your time and take each step when you're ready for it, and let yourself evolve at your own pace, because that's, and God, I mean, where else is there an industry where we face so much judgment, like those award cycles and things like that? It's like, just like, let yourself get there when you're ready, and work towards the next step as you go through all the time, and find ways to bring out your best and develop yourself. But yeah, give yourself some time and cut yourself some slack. I think is so important.
Yeah, so true. Well, Liz, was there anything else you wanted to add before we jump off for today?
No, I don't think so. No, I mean, congratulations on your series, and I hope it's inspiring a whole new generation of young people from all walks of life to join us in this amazing industry.
Thank you for coming on here and for representing Perth. That in my hit list of people, I had find someone from Perth. So thank you so much for reaching out, and looking forward to hopefully having you on the show again later on in the future.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Thanks so much, Chris.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.